So, who should really consider the Dell Tower Plus EBT2250 and who would be better off walking away? And is the price justified for the average gamer or creator who just wants a reliable machine for everyday use? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've been watching the buzz around Dell's new AI-enabled towers for a few weeks, reading forums where people compare it to the usual custom builds, and I've also chatted with a few folks who actually moved a workstation from a cramped mini PC to a full-size tower for the first time. The hesitation I keep hearing is simple: do I really need all that power, and will it actually make a difference in my day-to-day gaming or content work? Or am I just throwing money at a marketing label? Let's start with the kind of person who will feel this machine hits the sweet spot. If you're a serious PC gamer who likes to push the latest titles past 144 frames per second on a 1440p monitor, or if you're a video editor who regularly works with 4K footage and wants hardware that can crunch through effects without a 30-minute render wait, the Tower Plus gives you a ready-made platform that already bundles a high-end graphics card, a lot of RAM, and an insane amount of storage. The AI engines Dell talks about CPU, GPU, and a dedicated NPU are less a gimmick and more a practical shortcut for people who use software that leans on AI upscaling, denoising, or real-time ray tracing assistance. For example, a friend of mine who does YouTube editing tried the AI-enhanced upscaling in DaVinci Resolve on this box and saw his export times drop by roughly 15% compared with his older 16GB machine. That's the sort of everyday win you notice when you're on a deadline. Now, who should skip it? If you're the type of gamer who plays mostly indie titles, older games, or your content with 1080p at medium settings, you're probably paying for horsepower you'll never fully use. The same goes for someone whose primary computer use is email, web browsing, and office apps. You could get a much cheaper Dell Inspiron or even a refurbished business desktop and still have more than enough performance for those tasks. Also, if you're a DIY enthusiast who loves picking each component, building a custom rig can be cheaper and give you more flexibility for future upgrades, especially if you want to swap out the GPU later without dealing with a pre-installed, possibly proprietary configuration. One of the practical strengths that becomes evident the minute you plug this thing in is the storage layout. A 4TB NVMe SSD paired with a massive 20TB HDD means you can keep your OS, games, and active projects on the lightning-fast SSD while dumping massive media libraries, raw footage, or game installs onto the HDD without worrying about space. In a real-world scenario, I set up a dual-drive system for a client who streams 4K gameplay. The SSD handled the OS and the game itself, so load times were under a second, while the HDD took care of hours of recorded video files that would have otherwise filled up the SSD in a few days. That separation also keeps the system snappy over time because the SSD isn't constantly fighting for space with huge files. The other big win is the pre-installed Windows 11 Pro. For professionals who need the extra management tools, BitLocker encryption, and the ability to join a domain without a separate license, that's a hidden cost saver. It also means you skip the hassle of installing a clean OS, which can be a barrier for users who aren't comfortable with bootable USB sticks. The tower's modern graphite chassis looks more like a sleek office piece than a gaming monster, so it blends into a home office without screaming gamer cave. That aesthetic can matter if you're sharing a space with roommates or family members who aren't into neon lighting. On the downside, the size and weight of the Tower Plus are something to consider. It's a full-size tower, so you'll need a decent amount of desk or floor space. If you live in a cramped apartment, moving it around or fitting it under a desk might be a chore. The power draw is also higher than a mid-range build, which translates to a louder fan profile under heavy loads. In my own testing, when I pushed a recent AAA title to max settings, the fans kicked up noticeably, which isn't a deal-breaker but is something to expect if you plan to game late at night in a quiet bedroom. Another trade-off is future upgradability. Dell tends to use proprietary power connectors and sometimes custom brackets for the GPU. If you ever want to swap the RTX 5060 Ti for a newer card, you might run into compatibility quirks that a standard ATX case would avoid. It's not impossible, but it adds a layer of complexity that a custom build wouldn't have. For most users who don't plan to upgrade every year, it's fine, but it's worth noting if you like to stay on the bleeding edge. Pricing is where the conversation